Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me right now is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new horror movie, The Vigil, which is another movie coming out of the Blumhouse stable. And like Blumhouse have been doing a fair bit recently, this is another movie that really is a horror set in a culture. Blumhouse seem to have been experimenting with this a lot over the past few years, and they've had mixed success as far as I'm concerned, but this time it's a horror movie set amongst an Orthodox Jewish community. It centers around a character called Yaakov, played by Dave Davies, and he is actually trying to break out of the Jewish religion, but he's pulled back in by a kind of rabbi called Reb, played by Menashe Lustig, and he asks him to do this ancient ceremony that involves watching over a person who has recently died and reciting prayers. Now, originally, Yaakov doesn't really want to do it, but after Reb promises him some money, he agrees to go and do it. What happens is something that he would never expect to have happened, as he goes to watch this character, Mr. Litvag, played by Ronald Cohen, watches over his body and comes across his wife, Mrs. Litvak, played by Lynn Cohen, and it is a truly horrific night for Yaakov. Now, I have to ask, this movie is so different to a lot of the horror movies we see because of the Orthodox Jewish side to the movie. What did you actually think of the film?
Yeah, I really liked it. Like, it's quite a simple movie, and I know a lot of Blumhouse films are. They're kind of like the lower budget, on the lower budgeted end, like horror film. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I haven't seen a whole lot of movies that have really delved so much into like the Orthodox Jewish communities the way that this one did. I think the only other movie I can think of that I've seen that really kind of did the same kind of thing was the lesbian love drama movie Disobedience with Rachel Weisz, and Rachel McAdams, and it was. I mean, that and this is like they're two completely different types of movies, but that same kind of like feel like of this kind of like I don't know this completely different world, something that I've never really researched or looked into much myself, but it was really interesting the way that they kind of went into it and how like there wasn't a real heavy amount of exposition for everything. Like the way that the movie starts up with the characters kind of in like a support group as they are trying to get back into their like quote unquote like normal society, and just like things like that, and being dragged back into this thing that he's kind of the main character is trying to turn his back on. It was just really interesting, and from as a horror movie as well. Like on top of that, I thought it was really effective. Like considering like how very subtle a lot of it was, and there wasn't like a whole heap of CGI or anything like that. It was really creepy, really kind of oppressive, the way that almost the entire movie, I think with the exception of the opening, almost the entire movie is set in this apartment building, almost just in the one room, almost just with this dead body next to the main character, and all this weird stuff is going on. Like Keith Thomas, this is the writer-director Keith Thomas, this is his debut film, and I think he's done a really great job with this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one of the things I really, really like that Blumhouse does, is they're one of the very few kind of production houses in the world that give a lot of first-time directors a go. For Keith Thomas, he'd done a short film called Arcane a few years ago that received a fair bit of buzz, and now he's doing a sci-fi thriller with Zac Efron called Firestarter. But this film, it's the kind of film that, it's why I like Blumhouse. They'll do something a little bit different. They'll give a gifted young director that they think might go places the opportunity to make a film. And that's saying something, because even here in Australia, it's very, very hard for a first-time film director to get a film up with a studio, or even get funding to make a film. So I really applaud Blumhouse for doing that, and I think the horror genre is going to be better off for it over the years, because we're going to get a bunch of horror directors that perhaps go about doing things a little bit differently, getting that chance to be in Hollywood. I mean, this guy's gone from making this film to a big epic sci-fi thriller with Zac Efron. So, yeah, it really does. It's a studio that's really giving young, gifted directors that leg up to start their careers.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of movies from Blumhouse just over the last few years, and like there's science fiction movies, horror movies. Like a lot of them, they do have kind of the horror edge to them. But I don't know. For the most part, I've enjoyed quite a few of them, like the Invisible Man and Upgrade, just to name two of them. Yeah, just ones that I've really enjoyed, and the way they've kind of taken. The way, like I said, the way that they're kind of like lower budget things, they really can, I guess, go in a really interesting direction with some of the movies that they've made. Especially like Invisible Man, like that could have. I'm sure that's what Universal wanted, was just with that franchise, was to just make a standard Invisible Man remake. But what Blumhouse did with it, they managed to make something that was completely different.
Yeah.
And but like, what did you think of this movie as a horror film? I guess, like, how effective did you think it was?
I love the simplicity of it. I thought the horror of it was really good. The simple style of the film was what really won me over. The only thing I found that, and I think I noticed it more because we're in lockdown and having to watch these movies at home at the moment, not in a cinema. The lighting was really bad in this movie. It was kind of a little bit like Blood Vessel was, in that at times it was kind of hard to work out what was going on in a room or something like that. And I kind of really noticed it with this film. But aside from that, I thought this was a really, really good horror film. It gave us a little bit of an insight to the Orthodox Jewish community, and I don't know 100% what their beliefs are about spirits and stuff like that. Like, I don't know whether this goes completely against their beliefs or whether it kind of encaptures something that can happen. But I kind of liked the fact that it was so deeply embedded into the religious doctrine of the Orthodox community, and then having this really horrific thing happening to this guy that kind of worked and was kind of believable because of that, I thought.
Yeah, personally for me, it actually reminded me a lot of a video game that I played, a video game demo. I think it was just called PT, which I think stood for Playable Teaser. Well, it was for a planned Silent Hill video game, and that never ended up happening, but there was this playable teaser which was basically like a proof of concept demo that it was kind of like this haunted house thing where it was very, very simple, very basic. It's just like this looping hallway that you go into, and every now and then like a door would open and there would be ghost stuff happening, creepy sounds, jump scares and stuff like that. Just this like haunted house motif thing going on. And yeah, just this movie actually reminded me quite a lot of that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to find that demo, because it was really popular. The game never ended up getting made because of for reasons. But yeah, the actual like the feeling and just the horror, like the sense of horror, and even just the very basic like one setting of one location for the entire film to be based in, this little haunted house kind of thing. It really did remind me a lot of this demo. And yeah, so I mean, even in the movie, there's times, like I say, most of the film is set in just the downstairs area of this little apartment building, and there's a part where a character opens up the basement door, and the character and the main character goes down there, and there's like a TV playing, like somebody's turned that TV on, and like all of that, it did really feel a lot like a horror video game. Like you're along on the ride with this main character. And I mean, I watched the movie with my brother, and he said the exact same thing. And he had only seen me play this demo. Like, he hadn't actually played it himself. So I don't know. I thought that was really a I know, it's like, for a horror film to do that, it really was quite effective. Like, it really did kind of put you, like, in the middle of it with the main character.
Yeah, and there's a claustrophobic feel with this movie that really works, and I like the fact that sometimes in these horror movies where they're trying to, like, really work on a low budget, there's not a lot of stuff that's explained, like, well, why couldn't they do this kind of thing. But in this one, the fact that they just used the one apartment after the original scenes is explained, that he can't leave. Like, and we see the scene where he tries to leave. I thought that was really smart. I have a feeling that perhaps that Keith Thomas put that in there as a way to kind of limit a budget, and I think it worked really, really well. Like I said, so many movies I see have that kind of thing in there, and it's like, but why doesn't the character just leave? And you know, it's because they don't have the budget to have another location. But this film does it really, really well. I also liked that the actual horror element of the film tied into Jewish culture as well. I don't want to ruin it too much for someone who hasn't seen it, but it tied in really, really well. And I thought that this is one of those horror movies that, despite the simplicity of the horror, it didn't leave you feeling disenchanted or disappointed, but also at the same time, it answered all of those questions that you would normally have when you watched a movie like this. The director, writer, it felt like he explained absolutely everything for his audience.
Yeah, like, as then, the real claustrophobic feeling of the movie, and I really enjoyed that too. Like, it has this really, like, unsettling atmosphere with it. Like, I don't know, like, maybe I had the brightness on my TV up a bit or whatever. I thought it was like a really dark movie. I guess for me it was just dark enough. And yeah, it was really, I really like the way that, I mean, there's only so many cast members in this movie, right? And one of them is a character, Sarah, who Yakov meets at his support group. And he, like, when everything's going down, and like you say, where there's a lot of standard tropes in horror movies, like, okay, he has a mobile phone. Everybody has a mobile phone now. Why doesn't he just call somebody to help him? You know, like, and in this movie, whenever that happens, it adds to the horror feel of the movie. Like, at one point he calls up Sarah on his phone to kind of like FaceTime with her, and at first it starts like a normal conversation, and she starts yelling at him, and it's like even the phone call itself is haunted.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes, because there is something in Yakov's past where which it taps into why he has turned his back on his faith. He's in contact with his doctor, and he thinks maybe he's seeing things, maybe he's hallucinating because of his medication that he's on. And this actually, it also adds like another level to the movie of how much he's seeing is a haunting, and how much of it is because of like PTSD that he's suffering from something that happened to him in his past. And just that kind of stuff, just like stuff that made a movie. We've talked about this, like when a movie has like a one location setting, it's really hard to actually not make a movie like that really boring. But this actually made this kind of horror film work really well. And I like the way that there was only there's only like 5 characters in the entire movie that I could think of, and not a lot of them are really have a lot of focus on them. Like Yakov's the main character, and Mrs. Latvik is the widow of the deceased who Yakov is talking to throughout the movie, but most of the time she's upstairs or she's kind of trapped in the house herself. and the fact that like there's so few characters in the movie, and it doesn't really focus too hard on any of them in particular. I actually liked that because it meant that this spirit, or this haunting that is happening, which is focused on the deceased, on this dead body, it meant that basically this deceased character, who doesn't actually say anything in the movie, you almost like you feel for his soul, like that he's being tormented, like that his soul is being tormented by this spirit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
Like,
yeah. Like you actually kind of you want Yakov to help this deceased guy. You know, like, and in any other movie, if there was so much more focus on other like living characters, you wouldn't care. It's like, whatever, it's a dead guy, who cares? But I don't know, just something about the way that the movie's put together. You actually do empathize with this dead body and the hell that this dead body is in.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the believability of the horror. Like, quite often you'll watch a horror movie and you kind of, you're barracking for the characters to survive kind of thing, but because the horror is not all that believable, you don't really, like, you're not invested into it that much. Whereas with this movie, the horror is supernatural, but it has a believability about it, and you end up finding yourself barracking for these characters. And yeah, even like the deceased Mr. Litvak, you're kind of hoping that this entity can be taken away from him so that he can finally be in peace, even if that means resting in peace, kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's what goes towards it, and that's why I think I really, really want to see what Keith Thomas does next, because he has created such an intriguing horror film that really does have this level of believability to it that most horror films don't have these days.
No, especially like even with a movie that deals with like supernatural elements. Like when I saw that his next movie would be like a remake of Firestarter, the movie that I guess introduced everybody to Drew Barrymore. Or one of the movies that introduced everybody to Drew Barrymore. Yeah, it's just I don't know, that it's really cool that's like he's made the leap from this into something that hopefully he'll get a lot more like recognition from. I guess the only part of this movie I think that I might have had issue with, and I guess this actually speaks to how much I enjoyed the film, that it's really just a kind of a minor thing. The way that Yakov, his turning his back on his own faith, a lot of that has to do with this tragic event that kind of that hit him during his life. And the problem that I have with that, like, I can't really go into too much detail on that without spoiling things, but the problem that I have with that, there wasn't really much focus on the timeline of that. Okay, how long ago did this thing happen?
Yeah.
And like, what was the immediate aftermath of that? Like, was he blamed for that, or like was he blamed for this thing that happened? And
I felt it was that it happened. I felt that he felt that it happened because of his faith. So, like, it was. I mean, it was kind of a. It's something. It's kind of something that's only shown in really one scene. Yeah.
It's just in one like real kind of short flashback, and like I say, I guess if they focused too much on that, it would have taken away from what I said about actually caring about the deceased. What I said about that. I guess if they focused too much on the living main character, you wouldn't have really cared about the dead fate of the dead character. But I guess it didn't, like, there didn't need to be a whole lot more focus on that whole thing, but I don't know, maybe it would have helped. But that's really the only part of this movie that I kind of had any issue with. I just kind of wish I could see a little bit more of that, like what happened either just I guess what happened immediately after it, to know just a little bit more about what brought this guy to turn his back on his faith as much as he did.
Yeah, I kind of got the feeling that he hadn't been away from his faith very long, because some of the things that he was talking about in the self-help group was it sounded like it was kind of fresh, and that he wasn't used to not being around his family and not having money. So that kind of told me that it hadn't happened all that long ago. That, and he still seemed to have, despite their differences, he did still seem to have a kind of relationship with Reb. Like, it wasn't that they'd been separated that long that it was unusual for him to see him, kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, it almost feels like a kind of movie where you wouldn't mind if they actually made a couple more. Like, just so that
maybe, just a bit more to maybe focus on something else. Because there's even just, there's no, like, concrete, like, sequel bait in it.
No.
But it is kind of a movie that you think they could focus on it and do a sequel to it if they wanted to.
It's the kind of, like, Yakov is the kind of character that you would actually like to see them do another movie where he finds himself involved in, like, another supernatural event in the Jewish community. Like, maybe not have the same horror again, but because this event happens, it kind of becomes known that he's the character that you kind of turn to if something weird is happening in the Jewish community. Like, yeah, that's the kind of thing I could kind of see working with it. But I also get the feeling from, like, a lot of the things that Blumhouse do that they don't normally do a sequel to a film unless they think it is really good. So, which again I applaud them for, because a lot of studios are just like, hey, this one made a lot of money, let's do a number 2. Whereas, like, I know even for a Happy Death Day, having like interviewed both, like, Jason Blum and also like the director of the film, they really, like, kind of were like, is this going to work? Hey, actually, I do like this script, let's do it. Like, it didn't come down to, well, the first one made a lot of money, let's just do a second one. It really did come down to, does this movie work? Which, I really like that in a studio, I think.
Yeah, it seems kind of, like, rare for them to actually do sequels. Like, a lot of their movies feel like they're set up for sequels, but they don't make a whole lot of them. Which is, as you say, it's not the norm these days.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got an idea that makes a bit of money, usually just milk it for everything it's worth.
Exactly. And I guess that leads to the big question now. What are you going to give The Vigil out of 5? I'm
going to give this 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed this movie, and it's another notch on Jason Blum's belt.
Yeah,
it's another really good Blumhouse film. So 4 out of 5 for me.
I'm going to give this one 3.5 out of 5. I did really enjoy it. I just thought that perhaps they could have done something with the lighting in some scenes, but I guess it did add to, like, the bit of mystery for the film as well. So maybe I'm completely wrong with that, but 3.5 for me. And that's it for this episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. Kyle gave The Vigil 4. I gave it 3.5. Go and check it out. See what you think about it. But for now, I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we'll be back very, very soon with another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy.